Hello, everybody. Joe Ringen here. I am an author. I have written a book. It's a fantasy book because I love fantasy books. It's called The Ballad of Ages. And I'm also an avid reader. That's what I mostly do and am mostly talented at. And I love reading fantasy books, all sorts of other types of books. But I wanted to finally put my book reviews into video form and share them with the world. Hopefully, other people will fall into the YouTube rabbit hole of fantasy books and nerdy people like me who review them and give their opinions and inspire others to read more often. So, I wanted to start with a foundational fantasy book. Not foundational in the sense of world changing, I would say, like Lord of the Rings, but it's very inspiring and it's a good sort of entry into the fantasy world for people who are kind of weary or nervous for getting into fantasy books. Dragons of Autumn Twilight, Dragonlance Chronicles Volume 1. This is just fun fantasy. This is like when you think of, like Stranger Things or something, like being a kid, being a teenager, and all the cool things that go with it. This book captures that. Not in the plot, but just in the nostalgia, I guess. So this book was written in 1984, and that's a little before my time for being a kid, actually for being alive, for being honest. But I can imagine if I was a teenager in 1984, I would eat this book up. It is filled with all the cool stuff: warriors, elves, dwarves, dragons. It's in the title. Rich history and lore, really cool maps. I mean, all the fun stuff that you would need. And so I'll talk a little bit about this, hopefully to pique your interest. I'll be honest, though, it's been a few years since I've read this book, so I'm sort of digging into the back of my mind to pull out whatever I'm going to say, whatever's in there, my memories. I did I do have an online blog where I write reviews of books after I read them. It's just kind of more fun for me. I think it's like a hobby. So I read through that just before turning on the camera, and so that jogged my memory a little bit. I don't own the physical copy of this book. I know, like, my favorite thing on watching YouTube reviews is seeing the book like in the camera so you can see how big it is and what it's just a nerdy thing. I don't know. People, if you understand it, then you're one of my people. um, if I don't have the book anymore, I sold it to Half Price Books for like 5 cents and bought some more books. I'm trying to downsize my shelves, so I use Kindle a lot nowadays in the library to get books to the library because dang, things are expensive, like groceries and stuff. Anyway, different rabbit hole. All right, so Dragons of Autumn Twilight. This starts out with like it's kind of like a reunion of friends. It's not like a high school reunion, but it's kind of think of that. There was like a pact they had where after a certain amount of years they have to meet together at an inn, so they do that. But one of the people didn't come, so that's a different plot element later. So they all meet, and guys, I'll be honest, I don't remember a whole lot of what happens next. I remember there's like a blue crystal staff or something. That's an integral piece to the plot, and the female warrior, Gold Moon, she has the blue crystal staff, and then they go on a quest and run into dragons and things. So the plot, what I remember of it is there's a quest and they go to a statue of healing, and then they there's a, I you gotta forgive me, man. It's been a while since I've read this book, so I don't remember exactly what happens. I remember a lot of what happens in the third book because that book was Spoiler alert, my favorite of this trilogy. We'll get to that later on when I do a review of that. But what I can do is describe sort of the feelings, the characters, and what I liked about this book, other than the plot, because I don't I don't remember much of the plot. I don't think there was much of a plot. I remember they have to go on a quest to do something with dragons. There's like these things called draconians. Oh, my screen went dark. I gotta fix the timeout thing. Like draconians that they fight, and there's these really cool dragons. That might be in the second book. Oh, the blue dragons, I think, are in the second book. Anyway, so what I loved about this book were the characters. That's there's like a lot of them that to keep track of, but it's not like the crazy point of view thing like Game of Thrones, where it's like you get one chapter with, you know, whatever the heck her name is, Brienne or Jamie Lannister. You don't get like a 50-page chapter of just one person's point of view. They're all together, so well, they separate on their quest a little bit, but it's not like separate point of view chapters. So I like that. Sort of keeps things moving a little bit more. And this is popcorn fantasy at its best. It's pop music. It's not jazz. So it goes quick. You can read it in a weekend, really, if you're dedicated. But anyway, so the characters are really cool. I mean, it's Dungeons and Dragons, so it's kind of like the board game. So you got the Tannis, and he's the big, strong, like Aragorn type of guy who's leading the pack. Raceland, who's super cool. He's a wizard, and he's kind of like, you don't know if he's good or evil kind of thing. I'm excited to read the next trilogy, the twins or something. It is more about Raceland, I guess, and so he's an interesting character. I think of all, like, these are pretty cardboard characters, if I'm being honest. They don't have a lot of depth to them, and this book isn't about examining the human experience. So, but Raceland kind of is. He's got some different layers, like Shrek would say. He's an onion. But yeah, so he's a very interesting guy. Borders between good and evil, and black and white. Anyway, my favorite character was Sturm Brightblade. I think it was Brightblade, but Sturm. He's the knight of Slomnia. I think that's right. So Sturm, he's this solid knight guy. He's got a lot of morals and values, and he's an upright person. But what's interesting about Sturm is he kind of struggles with the concept of he holds to his beliefs, like his dogmas, as a knight or a soldier. It's so ingrained in you, you cannot go against the code, even if maybe doing so would have a better result, would help people. So that was very interesting and fun to read, because you kind of struggle with him. I run to that work and stuff. It's like, okay, here's the rules. I'm very much just a lame person. I don't like bend the rules so much. And it's like, man, sometimes we would get a lot more done if I did it a different way, sort of thing. Just in a lot of different areas of life. But Sturm, he holds to his values, and down the road, I won't spoil the next couple books, but it was sad, I thought, his story, because he's a great character, and I really, really he resonated with me. I latched onto him more than others. He's a fun character to read. If nothing else, I think if that sounds interesting, this would be a good series to read. So yeah, Sturm was my favorite character. But there's these other things, and they introduce, I forget the character's name, and I'm going to get just roasted online because he's probably the most, he's the Kender, who's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons' Hobbit. But he was a cool character. He was pretty funny. I gave this book 7 out of 10. It's a fun read. It's not going to blow your mind. But if you're interested and you enjoy fun fantasy books that you can really get lost in the world. That was the other thing I loved about this. I've read before this, when I was in junior high, I read a lot of the Drizzt books, so Forgotten Realms, like Crystal Shard, and I love those. And I was always kind of nervous about Dragonlance because there's like a million of these books. I didn't know where to start. I guess this is the book to start with, so I should have done my research, but that was before like the Wikipedia. Uh, so I finally got into this, and it's great. It's got so much history and so much lore. You can watch tons of videos on YouTube, read all sorts of like fan pages about the history of Dragonlance. It's so cool, and I want to learn a lot more about the world and the different people, and there's like way more books like The Legend of Huma I'm gonna read at some point if I can get my hands on it at the library. It's like what happens before the big war, before all these events. It sounds like a really cool read. So I'm excited about that. So that was another thing I loved about this series, and Dragonlance overall, is the rich history and the lore and all the stuff to explore. I mean, it's going to be cool. I'm going to keep reading past this Dragonlance Chronicles Volume 1 or whatever. There's a lot more trilogies and things. So I'll keep going with them. It's not on my next to read. It's more like if I stumble across it at Half Price Books for cheap, or the library, or on Kindle. I can get a lot of stuff on Kindle. I'll make another video about that at some point. But yeah, 7 out of 10. It was a good book. Not gonna change your life, but that's not what it's designed to do. It's just really, really entertaining. Oh, I do want to say one last thing, because I'm saying high praise about this book, but there was one thing that, and it's the whole trilogy really, that was, it's not like a negative, but it's just kind of funny and sort of takes you out of the story when you read it. So like somehow every character in this story has a love interest with another, like it's kind of like, Saved by the Bell or whatever, or if you remember college, like all your friends start dating someone else, like you're all friends and you just start dating each other and you fall in love somehow. That happens in this book for no reason. Like, there's central romance arcs that totally make sense and are important to the plot, but like everyone is all of a sudden falling in love and stuff, and it's just like cheesy. But maybe that's part of the charm. I don't know. It was like just super cheesy, just like sitcom TV love stories where they don't make sense. They just all of a sudden fall in love with each other, and it's cool. That's kind of, though, again, I think that's one of the charms, because it this book holds love highly, or on a high pedestal. Like, so that's refreshing that love is important in this world. A lot of modern books are just very like maybe dark, I guess. I'm thinking, Game of Thrones is the classic example. That's not the best one. I can't throw it totally under the bus. But you know what I mean. There's a lot of books these days where it's just like love doesn't matter. Everything's evil. Whatever matters is just yourself, kind of thing. And it's just sad. This book isn't like that. It reveres love highly, and that's cool. That's refreshing. It's very cheesy, though. So just be ready about that. It'll kind of take you out of the story. But I wouldn't tell someone not to read it because of that. Dragons of Autumn Twilight. Book 1, Dragonlance Chronicles, 7 out of 10. I enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys do too.